Sasha, how are you?
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Hope you're doing well too.
Pretty well. We had a great start to the new year, so can't complain much about
Yeah.
that. So,
Perfect.
Sasha, thank you for joining me here today. What is mental toughness to you?
It's a lot of different things. I think mental toughness is the capacity to deal with certain issues that we're faced with, especially on a daily basis. So obviously we're not talking really about the big stuff that happens in our lives, but I think mental toughness needs to focus on, or is a focus on the daily struggles, daily stressors that we deal with, and facing them with enough strength to push through at the end of the day. Because we all deal with stress in our daily lives, we deal with stress at work, we deal with stress in a sports setting as well. We're constantly being stressed to perform as we are at work. And I think having the mental ability to push through is a big asset and a must nowadays.
It's very interesting, and as you were sharing your experience on mental toughness, I was wondering, but how can one get or acquire mental toughness?
I think it's there isn't a set way where you can say, okay, I'm going to do this to be mentally tough. I think it's a collection of experiences in our life, starting off from when we're very young, dealing with certain things, when we're teenagers, growing up, dealing with friends and what have you. So it is an experience of, it is an element of experiencing things and being exposed to certain things. I think the upbringing has a lot to do with how mentally tough we are. Obviously, we need to have people that guide us, people that support us, people that we can confide in. Because obviously, dealing with certain issues, it doesn't mean being mentally tough, doesn't mean keeping everything to yourself and just bottling things up. It means talking about them, acknowledging your feelings, and working your way through those feelings and those difficulties. Obviously, we're dealing with things on our own. So just to give you an example from my sports setting, we're in a game, things aren't going the way that we planned, we're losing, final minutes of the game, we need to, look inside of ourselves and get that energy, that push to turn things around. And that is part of mental toughness. You're in that setting, you're alone. Okay, I have my teammates at the end of the day, but to get the energy to, strive to get that goal and get that score that we want, that has to come from within. And then obviously, motivate the others around you to mimic that behavior. So mental toughness is an element that, or the stressors, we need to overcome them alone. But again, at the same time, it doesn't mean that we have to bottle those feelings up.
True. To me, mental toughness is a very similar concept to what you described. Apart from the bringing side of things and the exposure that we need to have, sometimes we have to expose ourselves to certain situations which are outside our comfort zone. But then, to draw out the lessons, we need to reflect on those, because it's useless to be exposed to a particular situation, but then it passes by and we learn nothing out of it, whether it's good or bad.
Agreed. I think self-reflection has to be a big part of our lives. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not one who self-reflects a lot. So I'm not really someone that's going to end the day just looking back, seeing what happened, how I tackled them, what I could have done right. So, put my hands up. I'm not really the ideal guy to speak about self-reflection. But yes, I agree. I think it's something that we need to teach kids, teenagers to do more, because you learn a lot from your own experience, as you rightly so mentioned, and it teaches you a lot. Our experience and what we experience are our biggest teachers at the end of the day, because it's one thing when someone tells you don't do this or don't do that because this is the consequence, but when you experience things and you experience the consequences, looking back and saying, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I should have tackled that differently. or I should have spoken about that issue that came up when I stayed silent, or I should have spoken about how I felt and acknowledge that feeling, so that I wouldn't have gone into the deep end, so to speak. So yes, self-reflection is definitely a big part of building up that mental toughness.
You mentioned that you don't reflect
No.
as much.
No, not as much as I should.
So what's your experience when it comes to building your own mental toughness? How did you do it?
I think sports allowed me to build a certain element of mental toughness that I could then translate into my everyday life as well. Doesn't mean that it was foolproof, because obviously I've had experiences throughout my life that have challenged how mentally tough I thought I was, but it has definitely helped me develop that kind of mental toughness. Having played at a high level for the past 13 years now, 14 years now, since I was 16 years old, having played with the national team up until I was 21 years old, so played at a high level as well, you're put in certain situations where you either perform or you'll fail. So you need to build a certain skin. You need to have a tough aspect to yourself to push through those kinds of situations. And I think sort of that was one element that helped me build mental toughness. However, in the past year and a half, suffered an injury, kept me out for the past year and a half, and that has shattered what I thought I knew about myself. It really put things into perspective. How really mentally tough was I? Could I deal with this now, where my identity was rocked? Because having played at that level for 14 years, training every day, playing on the weekends, so my life was consumed by it. And then one fine day, injured today, tomorrow I can't do anything for how many months until get an operation done, then I'm out for another 6-7 months, and then you're back in the field, and then something goes wrong again, you're out for another 8 months. So obviously that then puts everything into perspective, and it rocks your idea, it challenges who you are. And that's where sort of I realized, okay, was I really mentally tough? Did the experience that I have, without reflecting on what I did right, what I did wrong, what could I have done better, what I need to work on, maybe on a personal level, to prepare myself for these kinds of situations, did I really do the work that I needed to do to be mentally tough? And I'm not saying that you're going to be foolproof, even if you self-reflect, because you're going to experience different situations, different scenarios that are going to always challenge you. But at least you know that you have the tools necessary, the skills necessary to push through, to come out the other side relatively, in a good
mental state.
In a good mental state, yes, for sure.
Sacha, I know that the operation was quite recent, only a couple of months, and you're just out of the recovery phase. How are you managing to put up your pieces back together?
Yes. First of all, I think you need to speak. So I sought support from a mental health specialist, psychologist, sports psychologist. I reached out, spoke about what was going on through my head, basically the feelings that I was feeling, the insecurities that came up after I suffered the injury, and I think that is important. It's speaking up. Not necessarily reaching out to a professional. Obviously, a professional will always help because they can guide you through it better, but at least reaching out to a friend, reaching out to someone that you're comfortable speaking to. I think that's very, very important, because sometimes speaking about things, not necessarily getting an answer back or a reply back, but speaking about things helps you process them better, helps you put things into perspective. And that's what that has helped me do. I've focused a lot of my life on sports. Obviously, I've had a career in parallel to that in recruitment, in HR, which has grown throughout the years as well. But sports was always the first love, so to speak. As I mentioned, been playing at a high level for 14 years. Started playing when I was 8 years old, so obviously it has been a big part of my life. And having that challenged, it raised some insecurities, which you don't even realize that they're there. So talking about things definitely helped. Focusing on other things, giving other things priority, maybe focusing more on the relationships that you have in life, focusing more on your career and seeing how you can continue to build further and push yourself maybe out of the comfort zone from a career perspective. That's something that I also did with new things and putting myself maybe a little bit more out there from a recruitment perspective at Tailwag as well. So it's also diversifying your sense of identity. That I feel is very important. I hadn't done that really extensively before, so obviously when it was challenged, it rocked a little bit my core. I think talking about it, first of all, definitely something that we need to speak more about, and especially in sports, I think, and obviously I play football, so we have that idea that we're manly men and tough and fighters, and we're constantly shouting at each other, and a little bit aggressiveness, and that alpha male vibes. But I think we need to speak more, and locally in the local scene, or we're seeing a lot of awareness in it in other leagues across Europe, for example, but I don't think there's enough awareness locally. There is support, so there's, for example, there's a players association that provides support and what have you, but I think within our community we're not speaking about it enough. I think people aren't that forthcoming with the fact that, listen, I needed support. I spoke about how I was feeling because it really rocked me.
The issue with reaching out and seeking support, obviously I agree with that given my background as well. The issue with raising awareness is it's a very sensitive thing to deal with, okay? Because it's okay to raise awareness, but you have to keep in mind the way that it's portrayed and advertised, the way that the message is communicated.
Yep.
Because it can create a sort of an escape. It becomes easy to put yourself down.
Yep.
It becomes easy to feel depressed, for example.
Yep.
It becomes easy because it's accessible. So although I agree with raising awareness, we have to be very mindful the way we do it, because it can become an escape and a sort of in itself a coping mechanism to cope with the feeling of failure, because it's a very nasty feeling and it lingers. So we have to, it's accept that we're feeling that we failed in some areas. We all do from time to time. But at the same time, we have to receive the tools, or we be given the tools, and to bring ourselves back up.
Exactly. No, I agree with you at 100%. And obviously, we can see parallels in sport and work. Yep. Especially where, for example, in sport we have very instant wins and very instant losses. We play a game every week. So one week you were on a high because you won, next week you're on a low because you lost, and you need to deal with that, and you need to acknowledge that, identify what went wrong and fix it. And I do agree with you that we can't use awareness, we can't use the support that needs to be provided to people who are going through difficult times as a form of an escape, because we're going to deal with stressors, as we said, every single day. It doesn't mean that because I'm going through a period of stress, for example, I need support. Because obviously we need to have the tools to deal with these things. But I agree that so a balance needs to be struck. It's a tough sensitive cookie. Line, it's very sensitive. It's a very sensitive area.
But the way I see things is that sometimes there is a push on the extremities.
Yes.
So speaking of masculinity, it's a buzzword at the moment. So we're at an extreme. You're saying that it's okay for men to cry. It's okay. We're human beings as well. We do cry. We do have emotions.
Exactly.
So it's okay for men to cry. But then on the other extreme, that men should be there, the men should be protective and supportive. So we're seeing the extremes.
Yes.
And we're not looking for a way, or we're not focusing. we're not focusing on a way to find the middle ground between these two and to look at the man as a human being as well. But I think the missing link is providing the tool and showing people how they can challenge themselves and get to know themselves better and to sit down and have a chat with yourself.
Yeah.
Because you need to reflect on yourself at a certain point so that you can come into terms with certain things. Sometimes you need the support of a professional, and that is needed. But the professional is not always there.
No.
There's like, for example, you're doing an essay, right? This is something that I tell to my students. You're doing an essay. There's not during the exam. There's no Google Translate to help you out or Google to search for the answer. You have to train yourself to find the answer and to find a way to respond to the question. And in most cases, the therapist is not always there. The counselor is not always there, and you have to have the tools to deal with the current situation that you're in.
And I think, certain people in position need to be, so it's not just a therapist, but certain people in position need to be trained to help. Maybe if you're a manager at work, you need to have the skills to help the people that are reporting into you to, steer them through that tough period. You need to help them and give them the tools to, go through that stressful period and come out of the other end, with a smile on their face at the end of the day. So I agree with you. We need to provide those tools, but there needs to be, we're not going to learn those tools by ourselves at the end of the day. We need to learn them from somewhere. And these people in position, be it a sports team where, the coach is coaching the kids, for example, or a manager that's, has 10 reports or 10 people reporting into him, need to have the skills to deal with these kinds of situations. Unless you have the skills to deal with these kinds of situations, you're not going to help people grow. And at the end of the day, having those tools means growth, because you're going to find those tools throughout the rest of your life, not just in that particular situation. You're going to find them in various different situations. If you learn the tools at work, you'll use them at home, you'll use them with your friends, you'll use them wherever, in whatever scenario or whatever situation. So I think, we do have to find the middle ground. You mentioned the point where, men are being split into two extremes, where either it's okay to be sensitive or, you need to be very masculine. And I think we do need to find a balance between both, which we seem to have, we're moving away from. I think men need to realize, or we need to realize what our position in society is. Still need to be, I think everyone needs to be strong at the end of the day, because men,
it's tough
women,
for everyone.
anyone, it's tough for everyone. Life is tough, so you need to deal with it. Everyone needs to be tough, and everyone needs to have the skills to deal with the difficult situations. But it's okay for people who are going through a tough time just to open up. That's what you need to do, is basically open up, and again, it's not about getting an answer. It's about processing what you're going through.
I think it's about mindset. It's about knowing that tough times will be there in life, but there will also be good times. So when you're in a tough position, and it's very superficial the way I'm perhaps outlining this, but even in tough times, you have to be hopeful that in some way, shape or form, in the future, things will get better, and then will get bad again, and they will get better
Exactly.
again. I mean, this is something that it's good to be an optimist at times, and I think that's why I'm saying that it's about mindset. Because if you don't have an optimistic kind of or hopeful mindset, you will see only the bad stuff about life.
Exactly.
And that is the balance that we need to create, sort of a feeling hopeful about the future, and embracing the fact that there will be pros and cons on every situation.
Always. And I think I saw a clip of Denzel Washington.
Okay.
And he puts it perfectly. He says, times don't last. The good times don't last. The bad times don't last. So we're going through, we're always going through the motions, and having the tools to deal with those. We need to deal with the good times as well. Everyone loves when they're going through a good time, you're on a high, but you need to be mindful that, listen, things can change tomorrow. And when you're on that high, by all means, enjoy it.
Of course.
Take everything you can out of it. But be wary of the fact that, listen, today I'm up here, tomorrow I can be down there. To be prepared, you always have to be prepared to a certain extent. Okay, again, enjoy the good times, but yeah, I think it's be humble.
Yep. Mindfulness practitioners would say that we need to be grateful.
Yes.
And mindful and present in that
Yes.
moment. And I think actually I think that's perhaps a blueprint in this regard, because if we're present in that moment, being it a bad moment or a good moment, there's so much that we can learn about ourselves.
Yep.
Especially in the bad moments, because it's our true colors will show during a bad instance.
Yes.
You mentioned that your injury showed you what you're made of.
You learn a lot about yourself in the bad moments, definitely. I think this 2022 has taught me a lot about myself. You mentioned that I got an operation earlier, or a couple of months ago. I had an operation done last year, and it's been a rocky year, and it has taught me a lot. And it's been one of the longest injuries I've had. And yeah, it puts things into perspective. It challenges what's important in life. At the end of the day, you have to refocus your focus. You have to realign your focus. You need to see, okay, so what's really important in my life? Relationships, work, success, career, whatever. It puts things into perspective. And it challenges that what you think. Sometimes you think that you have a stable ground, I'm good, nothing's going to rock me. Then something comes and just drags the carpet from right under your feet. And definitely, this has definitely taught me a couple of lessons.
What sort of lessons? How did this help you grow?
I think realizing, first off, as I said, sort of what's important in life, focusing maybe a little bit more on the relationships that I have, focusing more on work. And on work, not just being successful in work. I work in recruitment, and we're working in the business of people at the end of the day. And I think focusing on primarily helping people out gave me more satisfaction, than just working just to close the roads, for example. Just refocusing and putting things into perspective, like really and truly what's important in life. Okay, money, success, whatever, that's important. Obviously, we have to live. But at the end of the day, what gives you value in life? What gives you purpose? I think that is the cherry on the cake. Purpose. What's your purpose in life? Is my purpose just to play football, for example? Is my purpose just to work? No, you need to enjoy life. You need to help people out when you can, and when you're going through the good times. So I think putting things into perspective was one of the lessons that I definitely learned. Again, sort of the sense of identity. Who am I? Who's Sasha after the injury? Who's Sasha without football? Am I just a recruiter? Of course not. I'm not just a recruiter. I'm an individual who enjoys spending time with my fiancée now, who enjoys spending time with my friends, enjoys reading the books, which I never had time to read before because I never had enough time in the day. So the sense of identity will it was something that I really focused on this past year. Like the who am I? It's very cliche, I know, but yeah, it really came into the forefront of my the road that I'm walking through at the moment.
How did you manage to find your purpose? I think that's very abstract and
it
very
is, and I
challenging.
don't think I have actually managed to find my purpose as of yet. It's something that you're constantly working towards.
For sure.
I think there are people who are lucky enough to find their purpose and spend the rest of their lives working towards that and feeling very purposeful. But I think a lot of us we're constantly working towards finding what purpose we have on this earth. It's constantly changing as well. I don't really think I can answer you at this point. I think it's still a work in progress, to be honest, to be perfectly frank with
You
you.
need to self-reflect more.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. But finding maybe little things that are achievable, that give you satisfaction, that's very important. In terms of, again, purpose is very an abstract word, but I think finding these sort of small things that give you satisfaction in the things that you do in life, again, it could be selfish to a certain extent, but yeah, it's anything basically that gives you that sense of worth, maybe sense of self.
When it comes to purpose, obviously it's one of my topics of interest.
Yeah.
So a video or an article pops up out of nowhere. So what I'm about to say, I'm not sure from where I got it from, to be honest. It's not mine, but I heard it or read about it from somewhere. And in simple terms, the way this person or this article described the way you can find purpose is what Sasha does automatically, without even thinking, without even realizing what impact do you have on other people's life, without even realizing, and that would be your purpose. When I asked this question to myself, the answer was that my persona or the way of my being, the way I impact other people is, in most cases, I make people feel good about themselves, and that put up a smile on my face, and that this might be my purpose, to help people feel okay with themselves, and to help them realize how powerful they are, and embrace who they are with the both the good side and the bad side. And I think that I do that naturally. The more I thought about it, I do it naturally without even realizing it.
Talking about it, yes, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. But again, you got to that conclusion because you self-reflected.
True.
So
and I do
you
that a lot.
spend time looking into yourself. I don't spend enough time looking into myself.
That's the missing link then.
Yeah, it could be. That's what I need to work on 2023, for sure. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. So
it's not my idea.
But yes, but it does make a lot of sense. Like what we do, what comes natural to us.
It helped me.
Must be our purpose at the end of the day. Yeah.
It helped me set my bearings when it comes to Endeavour and even this podcast. I mean, when I first had the concept of Endeavour, and I didn't even have the concept of a podcast. At that time, I wish I could start a podcast, but I had no idea from where to start and whatnot. And I'm often asked this question: what I do through Endeavour, and because it's not clear cut, it's something. I wouldn't say it's completely innovative, but perhaps my approach is a bit innovative as well in itself, because it's not about providing HR-related solutions, but it's about helping people bring out the best qualities in themselves at the place of work. And the podcast on the other side is about helping people feel inspired about the experience of other people.
Yeah.
So it's a collective growth experience.
Exactly, it's growth. It's growth,
and it happens to every one of us.
Yes.
I mean, we all pass through tough times, and we all feel lost. So if we can help each other out in realizing that other people have gone through that, or other people are going through that.
Yes.
I mean, in your case, you are still, as we said, your operation is still fresh, so you're still perhaps
figuring it
out.
Yeah,
and that's okay. I mean, it's part of the process.
It is part of the process, definitely. And yes, I think relating to other people is very important. You know, speaking to other people who are going through, are going through the same things that you are. You know, sometimes that can help, because you realize that you're not going through this alone. You know, there are others who have gone through this, maybe are going through this now. How did they deal with it? Can I take something from their experience, and apply it to my scenario? Did they do something maybe that continue to affect the situation that they're in, and I shouldn't do that, or I know to stay away from doing that thing, for example. So yeah, sharing, growing, we need to grow together. we're living this life, you know, and we need to push each other up. At the end of the day, you know, we're talking about finding purpose. We're talking about sort of you setting up this podcast and still figuring things out.
For sure. Very sure.
Clearly, we're doing it together here
Yeah.
today. But yeah, you're learning out of this, for example, as much as I am learning out of it from your experiences. So yes, I think finding that collective, relating to other people, discussing, you know, talking about experiences, help us collectively rise and go through these tough times. It's not easy. It's not ideal to deal with things alone as well. I'm saying all this, I'm saying, you know, speak to someone and talk to your friends and what have you. I'm not one that naturally talks about my feelings or, you know, what I'm going through. But it does help. It does help. You know, I bottled things up for a year almost, and the way I was feeling about it and how it was really affecting me, and maybe pushing it to a side and, you know, sweeping it under the carpet and not really dealing with it. Until I came to a point where I was like, you know, I either deal with this or it's going to get worse now. And then when you do, again, it's just one conversation, you know, and again, no one really needs to, let me talk about my experience. No one really needed to tell me anything. It was just like a big weight was lifted off because I just spoke about it, you know, you're automatically acknowledging it. Doesn't mean that it was fine. Like I'm still processing things. I'm still going through stuff. There's still things that I need to experience in the next couple of weeks in terms of the rehab and what's going to work and what's not going to work. I might have more setbacks. So I'm not, you know, I'm still heavily in it at the moment. But it's always good to talk about these things and, you know, try to process. I've said this a lot about this podcast, but I think processing what you're going through and putting the pieces together, that's very important.
So far, Sasha, what was the hardest part that you had to accept about yourself? Something that you didn't like, but you had to accept it nonetheless.
I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not very confrontational.
In what sense?
Good question. So, I'm trying to find the words on how I'm going to put it. So, I don't know. For example, I'm not. So it depends on the setting, and it depends on the relationship I have with the individual. So if we're talking work and business, and I am, you know, I have an idea about something, and someone else comes and they have maybe a contrasting idea, I can confront. It's not a problem. You know, I can challenge. But there are certain situations where I feel that I'm not as confrontational as I should be, or I try to avoid the conflict, for example, rather than listen. I need to deal with the situation, you know, it's going to be a little bit conflicting, but, you know, it needs to happen.
It's an uncomfortable conversation that you need to have.
Yes. So sometimes I think that has been one thing that I you know, realized about myself that I need to work on.
Is it something perhaps personal or work-related?
No, it's more personal. Okay. I think in work, from the experiences that I've had so far since I've been working, I've learned a lot in work. I went through certain experiences that have taught me a lot about myself, again, on reflecting. So it wasn't when I was in those specific situations where I realized what was going on. It was a year, 2 years down the line, you know, again, talking about it with someone, discussing what I went through. And as I'm saying the things, I'm like, oh wait, but this is what I experienced. So that's why I'm doing these things now, because I went through that without even realizing, you know, I internalized sort of what I was going through. I learned from it, and now I'm approaching things differently. For example, I'm just trying to think of a particular example, but I can't at the moment. So I don't know. For example, I was, you know, challenged about something I did, and maybe I didn't agree with what I was being challenged with, but I didn't speak up because, you know, it's the manager. I don't know if I'm in a position where I can. But nowadays I realize that, listen, if I'm again, if I feel strongly about something that I did and someone that is maybe even in a higher position than I am challenges me on it, I'm not going to fight or argue, but I'm going to put my points forward, why I did the things a certain way, just to explain myself, and then discuss.
But you're more confident in your experiences now.
Exactly, but that experience that might have seemed difficult and tough at the time, and might have challenged me and stressed me out, I've learned from it, I've grown. I've dealt with it, I've internalized it, I've learned the lesson. Okay, challenging someone back, isn't necessarily a bad thing, because when you challenge someone back, you're learning and you're growing at the same time, because I'm putting my ideas forward. Maybe my ideas aren't right, but I'm learning. It's a process. So that was one thing which, for example, realized and took on board innately.
So you're saying that what I'm hearing is that you've gained an extensive amount of experience when it comes to work, and you can put that into action when it comes to persuasion or negotiation.
Yeah, for example, yes.
I'm going to flip the table on this. What experience are you lacking to deal with the situation in your personal life?
Good question. Never really thought about it. What am I lacking to deal in my personal life? I can't really identify it, to be honest with you. Haven't thought about it that much. I think.
Let me.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead. Because I was interrupting.
No, I'm lost. I can't decipher sort of what is lacking at the moment. At the moment, again, it's a period of uncertainties. It's a period of self-reflection.
Okay.
So I'm still in the process of figuring things out. Pretty sure there's something lacking.
And in such situations, it's about asking ourselves the right questions.
Yep, agreed.
And sometimes there is a sort of a conflict between the brain and the heart.
Yes.
Most of the time. So for me, when I'm faced with such situations, which we all do, I separate both, and say, and I even write it down on paper sometimes. So I write down what my heart is telling me about the situation. I write them down, or I think it through, and then I split the page in half, and I write what my mind is telling me. It's the logical side. It's the logical, and women are known for our logical side, and because there's a conflict between logic and emotions.
Yes.
Okay, so what helps me out is to extract my thoughts, because the brain, it's chaotic. The way it organizes the thoughts is very chaotic. Yep. So when you put your thoughts on paper, things tend to become clearer.
Clearer, yes.
But it's about asking yourself the right questions. How does this make me feel? If I do this, will I be happy? So the way I try to think things is that today is then version of Daniel.
Yes.
In 10 years' time, in 5 years' time, and I don't like to make 5-year plans. I'm not that kind of person.
I'm not either.
But in 5 years' time, what I'm doing today, does this reflect the person I want to be in 10 years' time, in 5 years' time? Does it resonate with the image of Daniel in my mind of the person I want to be? And if the answer is a yes, then I do take that decision. If the answer is a no, I don't take that decision, or I act accordingly. Yeah. But it has to fit the image of the person I want to be. It's very simple in the
practical terms.
Yes. But it's very hard.
I know what you're saying. I know where you're coming from, and I've had this duel between, the logical side of things and what my heart wants. It's happened. I've never made the decision, so they're still at loggerheads. But yeah, it happens, and it's not easy. It's not easy to come to those terms.
We are afraid that it affects the other person negatively, or the other person's involved.
Exactly, and yes, but sometimes you have to think selfishly as well, because really and truly, with the action, when you take these decisions, it's irrespective of. It depends on who the decision is going to affect. Yeah. Again, but sometimes it's irrespective of the individuals around you, and you need to act according to what's beneficial for you. But I think sometimes the one thing that really keeps me back is regret.
Okay.
the fear of, all right, if I take this decision because it's the logical decision to take, but maybe the thing that my heart wanted might have worked out. What will happen 2-3 years down the line? Will I regret the decision or not? And I think sometimes that is what hinders certain decision making, and we remain in the situation that we're in because we're comfortable in it.
Yes, and sometimes we have to speak to the right person, the person
Exactly.
concerned in the situation. For me, I'm as a human being, I'm very cautious and mindful of the way I speak to other people.
Yes.
And I often try to choose the best words to say in the situation so that I don't hurt the other person's feelings. I'm very cautious of that. Because I don't want to hurt anyone voluntarily.
Yes.
Everyone does from time to time.
yes.
But I try to pay attention to that. And some misunderstandings will happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes it's the way that perhaps we speak. What I'm going for here, I've read it somewhere again. This is something that I picked up on the internet. Okay, sometimes when we don't speak about certain things, we're still doing a disservice to the other person or persons involved, because we're not being open and we're not giving our 100% attention.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, and that motivated me to speak up on and having difficult conversations, because I preferred to have the difficult conversation and to be authentic with the person,
exactly.
rather than keeping it for myself, and then 6 months down the line I have a burst of frustration, for example, and I say things that I don't want to say.
Exactly.
So it's about keeping it in check and keeping our intentions under control, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think you need to be transparent. But again, it's two uncomfortable situations that you're putting yourself in. And, as human beings, don't think there's anyone that's actually, fond of putting themselves into these difficult situations. But there's situations that we have to put ourselves in if we want to grow. Again, set up the right mindset, be mentally tough in life. I think you will gain that by putting yourselves in uncomfortable situations, because that's where you grow. Doing the same things over and over again, you'll never learn, you'll never grow, and things will never change. So if you want to change, if you want to grow, you have to push the boundaries a little bit, push the boundaries that we've set for ourselves, because we set our own boundaries. If I want to achieve something and I've achieved it, then do I stop there, or do I push a little bit more and push a little bit more to continue to grow? And it's the same thing with mental toughness. I'm mentally tough. I think I'm good. I think I'm fine. A new situation comes, makes me feel uncomfortable. Do I stay there, power through, continue to grow, or do I, shy away from it because I'm comfortable? And sometimes I think that's what we're saying with the younger generation at times, is where we're putting them in comfortable situations, trying to keep them as comfortable as they can be. Are they going to be mentally tough to deal with certain issues, certain situations? I've seen a change in the sports industry as well, a little bit. We're moving away from having an element of competitiveness in 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. I remember when we were young and we were 8-year-olds, we just wanted to win. If we come second place, we're screaming and crying and, stomping our feet because we wanted to win. And that puts a certain mindset in us. It has, it's given us certain mindset that we want to win. And you need to win in life. You need to win at work. No one's going to give you things on a plate. You need to work hard. And that is part of mental toughness. Working hard doesn't mean working 80-hour weeks. But if I want to be good at my job, I need to, dedicate the time, dedicate the effort. No one's going to come up to me and give me things on a plate just because I deserve it. You need to earn it.
Yep.
And I think that's one thing which we really, really need to work on.
You reminded me of I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine about this, and someone he knows told him this, that if you want to be in a certain place in life, whatever that may be, you have to earn the right to be there. And I think that it's a very simple rule, but it applies everywhere. I mean,
It does.
in whatever area you do, being it a hobby, being it in sports, being it in business, I think it applies to everything. If you want to do something meaningful, you have to earn that position. That usually comes with the investment of time, so that you can gain the necessary experience. You mentioned that over time, over the past years, in the world of work, you gained, and this gave you enough confidence to have difficult conversations at work, and something that you weren't able to do 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because you weren't experienced enough.
Exactly.
So it's like a fruit. We ripen by age.
Exactly. No, yes, age, and experiences will shape us. They're our best teachers. You know, experiences will teach us a lot. New, as we said, putting ourselves in new experiences in uncomfortable situations will teach us even more. Because again, just to sort of repeat what I said earlier, if we keep on doing the same things and I keep on having the same experience, I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to grow as a person. I'm not going to grow at work. And you need to put the effort and the time in everything that you do. So even from a mental, just to go back to sort of the mental toughness side of things and the mindsets, you need to push yourself, always keeping your sort of emotions in check, being aware of what you're feeling and, you know, what you're going through, and not pushing yourself to an extreme where you're, you know, putting yourself in a dangerous situation. But you need to push yourself enough to learn and to grow and to, you know, add another layer and add another layer and add another layer.
It's like you're pushing yourself to evolve every time.
It's like you're going to the gym.
Yeah.
You're not going to grow unless you put, you know, you're not going to build those muscles up unless you put in the time and the effort and you have those incremental increases on a weekly basis.
I think that's the toughest part about that. I actually, going to the gym is a very good analogy because, well, it's a reality, not an analogy. It's reality.
Exactly.
And it goes hand in hand with what I was explaining earlier, because whatever you're doing today will have an effect in a month's time. If you're losing weight or building muscle, you won't see the results immediately.
No.
It's what you do today that will reflect in a month's time, in a 6 months' time, in a year's time. So it's very abstract because the mind cannot see the result immediately.
Exactly.
So you have to convince yourself, and you have, I'm using a buzzword again, you have to trust the process. That if you do this, because it's a blueprint, it's a formula, if you do this, you will achieve an DX result.
And it's consistency. I think it's not just doing the thing or putting yourself in that situation. It's the consistently pushing yourself, consistently, you know, doing the things that you need to do to put, you know, to get to where you want to get. And it's the same thing with sort of the mindset. It's like constantly pushing, constantly putting in the effort, you know, to gain that advantage, to gain another layer of toughness that you need to deal with different situations that you're going to be faced with in life. And it's a constant process of growing. So this is not something that you're going to do until you're 30 years old now and then stop doing it. So it's a journey because the experiences that you experience when you're a teenager and what you experience when you're in your 30s, 40s or 50s is completely different, and it's always new because we've never been at that age, you know, we've never been in those situations. So it's a constant process of growth. And realizing, I think that we are in a constant process of growth, which will help you grow even further because you'll identify, and again, you'll fall into what we've sort of been saying throughout this podcast is you'll identify that the self-reflection that you need to do, the tools, you know, that you need to have to achieve that and grow. So it's a continuous journey.
That's true. Sasha, you're at the moment you said that you're building up yourself back again and you're trying to get into your old routine with a fresh perspective.
That's exactly how I would put it.
What are your prospects for the coming few months? In your
Yes.
from a growth development perspective.
I think being realistic. So I've experienced something similar last year where I did the operation in August of 2021. Started training fully again in January. Had to stop after 3 weeks because I got more complications, and that was a big knock because mentally I wasn't prepared for it.
Okay.
Mentally I thought, okay, I'm good, I'm training, nothing's going to go wrong. Then something goes wrong. And that was, January 2022. 1 year later, I had to do another operation. So now my mind I've already been through that experience. I'm already aware, okay, do things slowly, do things at a comfortable pace. Things can go wrong. They can still go wrong, There will be setbacks, so I'm prepared now mentally for those setbacks. And you just have to push through. So what I'm expecting in the next couple of months is just going continuously increasing on sort of what I'm doing. From a sports perspective, is the target is to hopefully be back on the pitch next year, or end of this year, this season I mean. And from a personal perspective, from a work perspective, is the target is to continue to help people. Recruitment is an amazing thing to do. It's an amazing job to do. Constantly meeting new people who are in good situations, people who are in bad situations that want to change. Yeah. So our work really has an impact on people's lives, and that is something that 2023 is I want to really put into focus, is the fact that what we do as Tailwag is help people, find their purpose in life, in terms of work, find them the job that they wake up in the morning with a smile on their face to go to. And focusing on that, getting the satisfaction out of that, getting the energy out of that, motivate me to do other things in work and my personal life.
What I'm hearing, such as that you're in an active recovery
yes,
stage. And that's a very good way to put it, because it's in line with the sports thing, right? And I think from what I hear, I think you're in a good position because you're quite aware of the current situation, because you've been through a similar situation. And but I've noticed in the way you explain things that you're at the same time kind to yourself, and I think that's very important, because you're aware of your current limitations, but still are still trying hard in doing whatever you can.
Yes, and I think it's important to always perform to the best of your abilities, be it work related, be it personal life, or be it sports. I think, and I got this a lot from my fiance. She is someone who does things at 100%. If we wake up in the morning, do the bed, do it at your maximum, perfect, not a corner flipped over or whatever. Yeah. And I think that's the approach that we need to take in life. Like, do everything to the best of your ability. If you can't do this at 100%, don't do it at 99. Do it at 100. You owe that to yourself. Yeah. And that's the mindset that I'm trying to get at the moment.
It's a compounding effect.
It is. It does. It really does. It really does. And you do need to be kind to yourself. You do need to spend time with yourself. Take care of yourself, and not just take care of yourself from a health perspective. Eating right, exercising, whatever, but also taking the time to sit down, have a reflection. See what you need, do anything that you need to do to make you feel better, to make you feel good about yourself, and to help you grow.
So I think that was a very nice way to conclude this podcast episode. It has been a pleasure. This is actually our second time trying to shoot this episode. So I thank you once again for your time, and it has been a great conversation. I think we're able to share quite a lot here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure having these conversations with you, Dan. We always find a lot of things to talk about.
True. Take care, Sasha. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.